Imagine a mountain so desolate that the local Mansi tribes named it simply the Dead Mountain. In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytech Institute ventured onto its snowy slopes. Led by Igor Dyatlov, they sought a Grade 3 certification in the unforgiving Ural mountain range, but they never came back down, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt history for decades. Why does the name Dead Mountain feel like a chilling prophecy when we look back today? The mountain was known as Kakle, a name chosen by tribes who witnessed its barren peaks. To the Mansi people, the word Kakle literally translates to the haunting phrase Dead Mountain. They gave it this name because nothing grows on its windswept and frozen altitude slopes. On these desolate slopes, the group met a fate that remains one of history's greatest puzzles. This tragedy is known globally as the Dyatlov Pass incident, a name synonymous with cold dread. Uryudin was the only member to survive by turning back early due to sudden illness. The others pushed forward toward Kolatsiako, unaware of the inexplicable terror awaiting them in the night. What could be so terrifying that 9 people would choose to freeze rather than stay inside? Why did they slash their way out of a secure tent into the sub-zero Russian winter? The mountain was like a locked room mystery, but the room was the size of a mountain range. These experienced adventurers vanished into the white wilderness without a single witness to their final moments. Weeks later, searchers found a scene that would defy every known law of survival and logic. Their discovery on the slopes of Kakle sparked a mystery that has endured for over 60 years. As we peel back the layers, the details only become more disturbing and impossible to explain. What really happened to Igor Dyatlov and his team on that silent, frozen peak in February 1959? To understand the fate of Igor Dyatlov, we must first look at the land they chose to conquer. Deep in the Ural Mountains lies a peak that local Mansi tribes have long feared and avoided, known in their ancient tongue as Kakle. This silent giant casts a heavy shadow over the wilderness. For generations, the name Kakle has been whispered with a chilling translation that keeps travelers far away. To the Mansi people, this desolate rock is known quite literally as the haunting Dead Mountain. This grim title wasn't born from superstition alone, but from the harsh reality of its barren slopes. The tribes observed that the soil on Dead Mountain was strangely cursed and entirely devoid of life. They watched as nothing grew upon its jagged peaks, leaving the landscape stripped of all green vitality. For those who live by the land, a mountain where plants refuse to take root is a place of death. The Mansi believed the mountain was a hollow, empty void where even the hardiest spirits could not survive. This chilling reputation made the area a forbidden zone, a place where no wise hunter would ever tread. Yet, Igor Dyatlov and his team from the Ural Polytech Institute saw only a challenge to be overcome. They were elite hikers seeking their Grade 3 certification, the highest honor in the Soviet trekking world. To these ambitious students, the warnings of local legends felt like relics from a long-forgotten, superstitious past. Even the experienced Uryudin could not have predicted the darkness waiting for them on those silent heights. They pushed forward into what we now call Dyatlov Pass, ignoring the ancestral name that marked this place. Kolatsiako remains the enduring Mansi name for this peak, echoing the same terrifying meaning as Kakle. Every time the wind howls through the pasas, it seems to carry the weight of that deadly name. Why would any group choose to pitch their tent on the slopes of such a notorious, life-denying location? The answer remains buried under the snow, hidden by the very mountain that refused to let anything live. The rescue mission began with hope, but it ended at an altitude of 800 meters, with chilling silence. Young students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute were the first to scour the unforgiving and snowy slopes. On February 26th, Mikhail Sharon and his companions spotted a dark shape through the blinding mountain mist. There, halfway up the desolate Kolatsiako, lay an abandoned shelter, clinging to the frozen ground. The hikers had pitched their camp on a steep 30-degree incline, defying the typical rules of survival. This was height 1079, where a single, shredded tent, half buried in snow, looked like a haunting mountain ghost. The tent sat like a discarded shell, abandoned by something that simply had no time to look back. Shredded canvas whipped in the wind, revealing a massive, violent hole slashed into the side wall. This 8-square-meter sanctuary was all that remained of the group's high-altitude dream in their final night. Inside, the students found coats and empty backpacks lining the walls to block the piercing winter cold. Padded coats and heavy blankets lay scattered across the floor, suggesting a scene of domesticity turned chaotic. To the rescuers, the silent camp looked less like a tragedy and more like a riddle left unfinished. Most hauntingly, their heavy ski boots remained lined up neatly near the entrance, as if waiting for owners. Essential survival tools like the wood axe and saw sat undisturbed at the far end of the tent. Why would an expert group leave their vital axes and saws behind in a sub-zero wilderness? Every item found inside told the story of a group that left in a desperate, frantic hurry. Hearts racing, the searchers looked closer, but not a single soul remained within the canvas walls. No bodies were found inside the tent, leaving behind a riddle that only grew darker with every step. The site was a scene of everyday life, interrupted by a sudden, absolute, and terrifying chaos. If you were fleeing for your life, would you really take the time to line up your boots? At an altitude of 800 meters, the freezing wind was the only thing answering their desperate calls. The searchers stood alone on the slope, staring at a mystery that defied every logic of the wild. For over 30 years, this wasn't just a mystery, it was a classified state secret of the Soviet Union. You might wonder why it took until the 1990s for the world to hear this chilling story. After the searchers left Kholat Syakhl, the official files were gathered and locked away behind heavy iron doors. The tragic fate of the Ural Polytech Institute hikers became a ghost story whispered only in the shadows. For decades, the name Dyatlov Pass vanished from public maps, as if the mountain had swallowed the truth. Investigators were ordered to stop asking questions, and the case files were stamped with a top-secret seal. Families of the fallen hikers, including the sole survivor Yuri Yodin, were left with nothing but agonizing silence. What was the government so afraid of that they had to bury the investigation for over 30 years? The Dyatlov case became a time capsule of dread, waiting patiently for the internet age to finally explode. It wasn't until the 1990s that the Russian government finally allowed the dusty archives to be opened. When the files were released, they revealed a narrative that was far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. These documents didn't provide easy answers. They only deepened the mysteries surrounding the deaths of Igor Dyatlov's team. News of the Grade 3 certification trek gone wrong began to trickle out to a curious Russian public. However, the story was still largely confined to local historians and those who lived near the Ural Mountains. Then, as the late 2000s approached, the digital world stumbled upon this forgotten tragedy from the Cold War. Early websites and growing YouTube channels began sharing translated accounts of the night on the Dead Mountain. Suddenly, the international community was captivated by the strange details of the torn tent and the scattered bodies. Viral status transformed a local Soviet tragedy into a global phenomenon that sparked thousands of wild new theories. How does a story this big stay buried for 3 decades, while the world moves on without it? Once the archives opened, the world realized this wasn't just a hiking accident. It was a terrifying anomaly. The mystery of Kholat Syakhl was no longer hidden in a basement. It was now shared by millions. Every pixelated photo and scanned document became a clue for a new generation of amateur online detectives. The silence of the Soviet era had been replaced by a deafening global roar of speculation and fear. The legacy of Igor Dyatlov and his companions had finally escaped the grip of the state's secret vaults. But as the light of the modern world hit the case, the shadows only seemed to grow longer. To understand the tragedy, we must first meet the people who dared to face the mountain. These were not amateurs. They were the best hikers the Ural Polytechnical Institute had to offer. At the heart of this elite group stood a man whose name would become legendary: Igor Dyatlov. Igor wasn't just a leader. He was a brilliant radio engineer with a mind for technical precision. His expertise gave the group a sense of security that few others could hope to match. Alongside Dyatlov, 9 other individuals prepared for an expedition that would test their very limits. The group consisted of 9 dedicated students and 1 older, mysterious companion with ex-military experience. Together, these 10 souls formed a team bound by friendship and a shared passion for the wild. Every single member held a prestigious grade to hiking certification from their university. This rank meant they were already seasoned veterans of the Soviet Union's harshest wilderness environments. They weren't just walking into the woods. They were pursuing a grueling Grade 3 certification. Achieving this level required navigating the most dangerous and desolate terrain the Ural Mountains could offer. They were young, vibrant, and possessed the physical strength required for such an unforgiving journey. Imagine the confidence of a group where everyone is an expert in survival and navigation. Could 9 of the most capable students in the country truly all make the same fatal mistake? Igor Dyatlov acted as the group's mission controller, guiding them with calculated, engineering-like accuracy. Their preparation was meticulous, leaving nothing to chance as they packed their gear for the cold. For students of the Ural Institute, this trip was meant to be a crowning achievement. They carried the pride of their school and the resilience of a generation raised in challenge. Yuri Yudin, one of the original members, walked beside them as they began their fateful trek. These individuals were prepared for blizzards, sub-zero temperatures, and the exhaustion of the climb. To their families, they were promising scholars. To the mountains, they were merely temporary visitors. What does it take to lead a group into the most uninhabited regions of Russia? It takes a leader like Dyatlov, whose technical skills were matched only by his iron will. They were a tight-knit unit, moving through the snow with the grace of experienced mountaineers. Every step forward was a testament to their training and their unwavering trust in one another. They were highly prepared and ready for any challenge the Russian winter might bring. They believed they were ready for anything, but the mountain was preparing a different story entirely. They were young, fit, and prepared for anything, or so they thought as they climbed. This expedition wasn't just a casual holiday, but a rigorous test of Soviet endurance and skill. To earn the prestigious Grade 3 certification, these hikers had to survive the country's most brutal environments. Think of the Grade 3 qualification as the ultimate Olympic gold medal for Soviet wilderness explorers. What kind of person seeks out the highest, most grueling qualification available in the entire land? Igor Dyatlov and his team aimed to secure their place among the elite master of sports. Achieving this status required meeting strict, unforgiving criteria that pushed the human body to its limits. The mission required the team to cover a staggering distance of at least 186 total miles. Well, that was the minimum. Their ambitious planned route actually stretched closer to 300 exhausting miles. Time was a factor, as the group needed to endure a minimum of 16 days in the wild. They were prepared to spend no fewer than 8 full days in completely uninhabited, desolate territory. To prove their resilience, the regulations mandated spending at least 6 grueling nights inside a thin tent. At least 1/3 of their massive journey had to pass through specifically designated challenging terrain. Their ultimate destination was the summit of Otorten mountain, a peak deep within the frozen wilderness. For the hikers of the Ural Institute, this journey was the final hurdle to greatness. Yuri Yudin and the others knew the risks, yet they pushed forward toward their legendary goal. Every mile trekked brought them closer to the title they had worked their entire lives to achieve. They were experts in navigation, survival, and teamwork, ready to face whatever the northern Urals offered. Little did they know that the very terrain they sought to conquer would eventually bear a new name. The mountain pass, where their journey ended, would later be renamed in honor of Igor Dyatlov. But back in the mountain they chose for their glory had a far different, darker plan. To understand why Igor Dyatlov led his team into the frozen wilderness, we must look at their goal. In the Soviet Union, athletic achievement was more than a hobby. It was a matter of national pride. These students from the Ural Institute were chasing the highest honor a hiker could possibly achieve. Success on this treacherous journey would have granted the entire group their official Grade 3 certification. At that time, the Grade 3 certification stood as the most prestigious hiking qualification in the country. This wasn't just a badge. It was a testament to one's endurance against the most brutal elements. Achieving this level meant being recognized among the elite explorers of the vast Soviet landscape. For Igor Dyatlov, this certification represented the culmination of years spent mastering the mountain peaks. Even Yuri Yudin knew that such a prestigious title would change their standing within the university. The stakes were incredibly high, as the Grade 3 certification opened doors to a remarkable future. Specifically, this rare qualification allowed members to be distinguished as a prestigious Master of Sports. Being a Master of Sports carried immense social weight and respected status throughout the entire Soviet Union. It was a title reserved for those who demonstrated peak physical condition and unwavering mental fortitude. To these young hikers, the title was worth the frostbite and the exhaustion they faced daily. They weren't just walking through snow. They were climbing toward a life-defining social and athletic milestone. Every mile across the slopes of Koletsiakul brought them closer to that coveted elite status. The pressure to succeed was palpable among the group as they navigated the unforgiving Ural terrain. In their world, the Master of Sports title was the ultimate symbol of socialist strength and capability. They believed their technical preparation would be enough to secure their place in Soviet athletic history. Little did they know that the very quest for prestige would lead them into a legendary tragedy. The journey began at 9:05 p.m. On January 23rd, as they left the comfort of Sverdlovsk behind, they boarded the train. Unaware this path would eventually lead them into the pages of history, this iron carriage would carry them over 200 miles north toward the remote, industrial town of Sarov. For 11 grueling hours, the rhythmic clatter of the tracks was the only sound in the frozen night. At 7:39 a.m. on January 24th, the group finally stepped onto the platform in Chile-Sarov. The Ural Polytech Institute hikers were still full of life, their energy unaffected by the long travel. During that afternoon, the team shared songs and stories with local school children in the town. These eager students would be among the last people to witness the group's infectious, youthful spirit. As evening fell, they pushed another 100 miles further north by train toward the outpost of Ivdel. The train was a one-way ticket away from safety, plunging them into the deep Soviet winter. The group arrived at Ivdel around midnight, surrounded by the haunting silence of the remote north. How do you prepare for a midnight arrival in a town as isolated and dark as I? Sleep was a luxury they couldn't afford before catching the 6 a.m. bus to Vit. With every mile, the civilization they knew was fading, replaced by the vastness of the wilderness. Could they feel the temperature dropping as they moved toward the isolation of Sector 41? By the day after January 25th, the expedition had reached the remote area known as Sector 41. Sector 41 was a place of work in winter, the last outpost before the true wilderness began. Here, the reality of their Grade 3 certification challenge began to set in with the biting cold. Igor Dyatlov led his team forward, determined to reach the peaks that loomed in the distance. On January 27th at 4 p.m., the group began their trek up the winding Lazve River. They were now stepping away from safety and into the heart of the unforgiving Ural Mountains. Their final interactions with civilization would be the last time anyone saw them alive. In every tragedy, there is a survivor, and Uryudin was the one who stayed behind. There were 10 who started this journey toward the snowy peaks of the Ural Mountains. Among the elite students of the Ural Polytech Institute, Uryudin stood as the 10th member. On January 28th, a crippling bout of rheumatism became Uryudin's strange and sudden saving grace. The group arrived at an abandoned geological site in the early hours of that cold morning. As the wind howled, Udin realized his body could no longer endure the freezing trek ahead. His ongoing struggle with illness had finally reached a breaking point in the Siberian wilderness. While the others prepared for the climb, Udin faced the bitter disappointment of turning back. Is it luck or fate when a painful illness unexpectedly saves your life from certain doom? To his friends, it seemed like a stroke of bad luck for their determined companion. Uryudin was like the man who missed a flight that was destined never to land. The cold reality of his rheumatism forced a painful decision that would haunt his later years. He watched as Igor Dyatlov and the others packed their gear for the final ascent. Their quest for Grade 3 certification continued, leaving their injured friend in the quiet shadows. At the time, Udin felt he had failed the team and their ambitious mountain mission. He could not have known that his swollen joints were shielding him from a terrible fate. The abandoned settlement served as the final stage for their last group photograph together. A brief embrace and a few parting words marked the end of his journey with them. He waved goodbye to his 9 friends in the early morning, never imagining he'd be the survivor. The figures of his companions slowly faded into the white horizon of the Koletsaya. Udin turned toward safety, while the others marched toward what would become the Dyatlov Pass. How do you live with being the only member who turned back from the mountain? Every step he took away from the peak was a step toward a long life. He never imagined he would be the only one of the 10 to grow old. His illness, which felt like a failure then, was actually his ultimate and final salvation. Now, there were nine pairs of skis carving a path into the cold, unknown wilderness ahead. On January 29th, the skiing began, leaving the last remnants of human civilization far behind them. Their journey into the frozen heart of the Urals was reconstructed through haunting journals and salvaged photographs. Each recovered entry provides a narrow window into the minds of the hikers during their final days. They pushed north along the Lazva River, battling biting winds as the landscape slowly turned blindingly white. What goes through your mind when you realize you are officially off the map and entirely alone? The group maintained a steady pace, driven by their pursuit of the prestigious Grade 3 certification. By January 30th, the trekkers turned their attention west, following the winding path of the Ospia River. The Ospia, a cold tributary of the Lazva, led them deeper toward the mountain they sought. Trudging through deep snow, the 9 friends relied on their skills to navigate the increasingly treacherous terrain. Every photograph they took captured the stark, desolate beauty of a world that seemed to ignore them. The mountain looming in the distance was known to the local Mansi people by the name Kakle. Officially designated as Height 1079, Kakle stood as a silent witness to their slow and steady approach. At the base of this formidable peak, the group decided to lighten their heavy, winter-laden loads. They carefully built a supply cache, a strategic storage site meant to aid their return journey later. Why did they choose to build the supply cache exactly where they did in that frozen expanse? This cache stored excess food and equipment, proving their competence and careful preparation for the high peaks. The supply cache was like an anchor, but the coming storm was already preparing to snap the rope. They stood in the shadow of Kakle, unaware that the safety net they built would never be used. With their packs lightened and spirits high, the 9 hikers prepared for the final ascent into legend. February 1st arrived with a biting wind that threatened to swallow the hikers whole in its icy grasp. The Ural Mountains unleashed a fierce blizzard, reducing their visibility to a world of blinding, swirling white. As they pushed forward, the harsh weather and low visibility forced Igor Dyatlov's team to slow their pace. Navigating the frozen landscape became nearly impossible as the landmarks vanished beneath a heavy shroud of snow. Unknowingly, the group began to stray off their intended course, drifting away from the safety of the valley. Instead of finding their planned route, they found themselves climbing high onto the exposed slopes of Height 1079. This barren ridge was known to the local tribes as Kolat-Sayakal, the ominous mountain of the dead. With the storm intensifying, the hikers made the fateful decision to pitch their tent right on the hillside. By 5:30 p.m., the group had finally settled inside their fragile canvas shelter, protected from the howling wind. The tent was a small, fragile bubble of warmth amidst an endless ocean of freezing, unforgiving ice. Despite the cold, the atmosphere inside the tent remained remarkably light and filled with typical student humor. To pass the time, they collectively worked on a satirical mock newspaper titled The Evening. They scribbled jokes and lighthearted stories, their laughter echoing briefly against the thin walls of their shelter. Was this paper a desperate attempt to keep their spirits up while facing the mountain's growing fury? These elite hikers from the Ural Polytech Institute seemed blissfully unaware of the danger lurking just outside. Their campfire was impossible to light on the treeless slope, so they shared a cold, simple evening meal. They huddled together, finding comfort in the bond they had forged over many miles of treacherous terrain. Did they realize they were camping directly on the slopes of the dead mountain during that final evening? The evening Otorten would remain as a haunting testament to their final moments of joy and camaraderie. They prepared for sleep, confident in their Grade 3 certification and their ability to conquer the wilderness. Outside the tent, the blizzard continued its relentless assault, burying the mountainside in a deep, cold silence. It was their last night of laughter before an unknown terror would change their lives forever. As the light faded, the 9 friends settled in, never dreaming this would be their final resting place. The wind roared across the slopes of Kolat-Sayakal, masking the sounds of the mountain shifting above them. Within the thin walls of their tent, the Dyatlov group closed their eyes for the very last time. And then, the unthinkable happened, shattering the silence of the Dyatlov Pass with a sudden, violent terror. The hikers didn't use the door. They used knives to slash through the heavy canvas from the inside. This was an calculated exit, but a panicked escape from something within the walls of their own tent. Imagine the sheer desperation required to destroy your only protection against the lethal winds of Kolat-Sayakal. Investigators found the fabric sliced open in several places, revealing a frantic struggle to reach the freezing air. What could be more frightening than a blizzard? Whatever forced them to choose the storm over the tent. They fled like prey, sensing a predator, abandoning every piece of survival gear they had carefully packed. Recall the neatly lined up boots inside the tent. The hikers had no time to put them on. In a world where minutes mean death, 9 members of the Ural Polytech elite sprinted into the darkness. The hikers ran out into the cold night barefoot and wearing little more than their thin thermal underwear. Could you survive even 10 minutes in your underwear at temperatures reaching 30 degrees below zero? Their footprints told a story of a group moving in unison, yet stripped of their essential winter clothing. They left behind their jackets, their hats, and most importantly, the sturdy boots required for the jagged terrain. Every step through the deep snow without protection would have felt like walking on shards of broken glass. This sudden flight into the freezing darkness marks the most haunting moment of the entire Dyatlov Pass mystery. Evidence suggests they were not chased by another person, yet they fled with a singular, terrifying purpose. The internal slashes in the tent remain a chilling testament to the absolute panic that gripped the group. 9 of the 10 group members would eventually perish in the unforgiving embrace of the Siberian wilderness. Their journey for Grade 3 certification ended not with a trophy, but with a desperate scramble for survival. They ran into a blizzard barefoot, wearing nothing but their underwear, toward a fate they couldn't possibly escape. Investigators reaching the abandoned campsite on Chronicle faced a scene of absolute, chilling confusion. The tent of the Dyatlov Pass group stood as a lonely, tattered ghost against the white snow. At first glance, the large hole in the canvas suggested a violent attack from something outside. Rumors immediately swirled about mysterious intruders or predatory beasts stalking the Ural-Polytech Institute hikers. To find the truth, Soviet forensic experts carefully analyzed the fabric of the damaged tent walls. They focused their investigation on the precise edges of the jagged tiers and deep slopes. Under careful scrutiny, the forensic evidence began to tell a far more terrifying story of desperation. The direction of the blade strokes revealed that the tent was actually sliced from the inside. This critical discovery proved that the hikers were not being cut in two, but were breaking out. Igor Dyatlov and his team likely felt trapped, forced to create their own desperate emergency exit. Imagine the sheer panic required to choose the frozen air over the safety of their shelter. Each internal cut represented a desperate second saved while fleeing an unseen terror within the tent. This forensic revelation shattered the theory of an external predator lurking just outside the canvas. Instead, it pointed toward an internal catastrophe that left no time to even open the door. The hikers from the Ural-Polytech Institute were seasoned enough to know that leaving meant death. Yet, the internal slashes confirmed that staying inside was somehow even more dangerous than the blizzard. This single piece of evidence remains the most haunting clue found on the slopes of Kolatsa. It forces us to wonder what could possibly terrify experts like Igor Dyatlov to this extreme. The slashed canvas serves as a silent witness to the final, frantic moments of the expedition. With the tent destroyed by their own hands, the group vanished into the darkness of Dyatlov Pass. Soviet investigators noted that the hikers abandoned their critical survival gear inside the damaged shelter. Without their boots or coats, the group stood no chance against the brutal Siberian winter weather. The slashed canvas represents a fatal turning point where survival instinct overrode every logical decision. For decades, the mystery of the internal cuts remained one of the most debated pieces of evidence. It is a chilling reminder that whatever happened on Height 1079 was sudden, violent, and absolute. Hypothermia is a silent killer, but for Igor Dyatlov and his team, the cold was just the start. When the bodies were finally uncovered, investigators faced a reality far more terrifying than a winter storm. Most hikers succumbed to the biting frost, their bodies found frozen in the unforgiving Ural snow. Exposure claimed their lives as they huddled against the lethal temperatures of that February night. Yet, for some members of the party, the cause of death defied every logical explanation. Beyond the expected frostbite, autopsies revealed horrific injuries that seemed impossible in the wilderness. How do you sustain internal trauma so severe without a single bruise appearing on the skin? These were not the wounds of a fall, but the results of an immense, crushing force. Some hikers suffered broken ribs and fractured skulls, while their external tissue remained completely intact. Investigators noted that these injuries were consistent with the impact of a high-speed car crash. But on the slopes of Kolatsaiko, there were no cars for hundreds of desolate miles. The sheer level of physical destruction suggested a violent encounter that no mountain storm could explain. The silence of the mountain hid a sequence of events that left medical experts utterly baffled. Is it possible for the freezing cold to be the least of your worries in the dark? The injuries challenged the expertise of the Ural-Polytech Institute and baffled official Soviet investigators. Some bodies were found near the tent, while others lay deep within the tree line's shadow. Those who died from hypothermia left behind a trail of desperate, freezing struggle against the elements. However, those with internal injuries presented a puzzle that challenged the very laws of physics. There was no sign of a struggle with another human, yet the bones were shattered. No weapon known to the investigators could have produced such specific, devastating internal damage. The cold was a known enemy, but this invisible, crushing power was something entirely different. Every new discovery on the autopsy table only added another layer to the growing tragedy. It became clear that the mountain had witnessed something far more sinister than a mere accident. The forest held secrets that even the most detailed medical reports could never truly reconcile. The autopsy reports from the Dyatlov Pass revealed a chilling divide that baffled the original Soviet investigators. On one side, the mountain claimed lives through the slow, biting embrace of the Russian winter. Most of the Ural Polytech Institute hikers were found to have succumbed to the silent grip of hypothermia. For these victims, the freezing winds of Kolat-Syakhl proved to be a quiet and inevitable end. They were found under the snow, their bodies preserved in the final moments of an icy struggle. It seemed like a tragic but straightforward battle against the elements in the heart of the wilderness. Yet, as the medical examinations continued, a far more violent and disturbing narrative began to emerge. A second group of hikers had met their end through what could only be described as horrific injuries. These were not the gentle shutdowns of frozen systems, but the results of a sudden, crushing force. The contrast between the two causes of death split the tragedy into two very different mysteries. How could one night on Kolat-Syakhl produce such a jarringly different set of final moments? Some died peacefully in the snow, while others were broken by a power that defied easy explanation. Igor Dyatlov team was now divided by the very nature of how their lives were taken away. While hypothermia is a common mountain danger, the unexplained trauma hinted at something much more sinister. Investigators struggled to reconcile the peacefulness of the frozen with the violence of the broken bodies. This dual nature of the tragedy created a puzzle that the official records simply could not solve. One group was taken by the cold, but the other group was taken by a brutal, unknown impact. This startling discovery turned a survival story into a complex medical mystery that still haunts us today. The mountain had spoken twice, once with a whisper of frost and once with a roar of violence. This haunting division remains the core of the mystery surrounding the infamous Dyatlov Pass incident. Back in Sverdlovsk, the silence from the mountains was becoming a deafening roar of growing worry. February 12th came and went without a single telegram arriving from the elite Ural Polytech hikers. The calendar flipped to February 13th, the day the group was officially scheduled to return home. At first, the lack of news didn't cause an immediate panic among the Institute's watchful officials. Before departing, Igor Dyatlov had warned Yuri Yudin that their return might be slightly delayed. He knew the harsh terrain toward Kolat-Syakhl could easily slow down even the most experienced team. However, as the 14th and 15th passed, that small window of expected delay began to close. Each sunrise without a word felt like a heavy weight pressing down on the waiting families. The wait was becoming a slow-motion nightmare for parents who checked the mail every single hour. By the 17th, the quiet from the Ural wilderness was no longer just a simple travel delay. Whispers of concern started echoing through the halls of the Ural Polytech Institute's cold corridors. At what point does running late transform into the terrifying realization that something is horribly wrong? The families reached their breaking point as February 20th arrived with still no sign of life. They demanded an immediate rescue operation to find the 9 hikers lost somewhere in the snow. The pressure from grieving parents finally forced the hands of the hesitant Soviet authorities. A search party quickly formed, but it wasn't composed of hardened military rescue specialists. Instead, the first to step forward were those who knew the missing hikers the best. Brave volunteers, including anxious family members and fellow students, prepared to face the freezing unknown. Teachers from the institute joined the ranks, setting aside their books for heavy winter gear. They were heading toward a place known to the Mansi as the dreaded Dead Mountain, who would volunteer to search for friends in a landscape that swallowed both sound and light. These civilians were fueled by hope, though the winter winds whispered a much darker story. As they packed their bags, they had no idea they were about to walk into a graveyard. The rescue mission was officially underway, beginning a journey that would haunt them forever. The searchers set out into the wilderness, unaware of the chilling scene awaiting them on the slopes. The investigation finally closed its books. But for many, the haunting questions only grew louder. The mountain was eventually renamed Dyatlov Pass, to honor the brave leader who never returned. That name now stands as a permanent memorial to 9 lives lost in the frozen wilderness. We are left wondering if the truth is buried in archives or still out on the mountain. The Dyatlov Pass incident has become a North Star for those who seek the truly unexplained. Every detail of that mysterious February in 1959 has been scrutinized by countless curious minds. Yet, The chilling silence of Kakle refuses to yield its most precious and terrifying secrets. Experts from across the globe still debate the forces that caused such sudden, violent panic. Was it a rare natural phenomenon, or something far more sinister hidden from the world? The legacy of these hikers lives on through every new theory and scientific investigation today. Their story reminds us that even now, nature holds formidable mysteries that we cannot explain. Some believe the ultimate truth was scrubbed from Soviet records long before we saw them. Others look to the stars or the shadows, searching for an answer that fits the trauma. To this day, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains a haunting puzzle with many missing pieces. We honor the memory of those students who sought adventure but found an eternal, icy end. Their names are etched into history, forever linked to the slopes of the dead mountain itself. Will we ever truly know what happened on the desolate slopes of Height 1079 that night? Perhaps the mountain itself is the only witness that will ever understand those final moments. As the wind howls through the pass, it carries the echoes of a mystery still unsolved. Some secrets are meant to remain buried deep beneath the winter snows of the Ural Mountains. We close this chapter knowing that the legend of Igor Dyatlov will never be forgotten. The world may never see the definitive proof needed to lay this great tragedy to rest. Until then, the hikers remain frozen in time, guarding the truth on that lonely mountain. Some mysteries, it seems, are simply destined to remain unsolved in the shadows of the past. The facts are on the table, but the final theory remains entirely up to you. Now it is your turn to decide if this was a natural disaster or a military secret, or perhaps something else entirely occurred on the slopes of Kakle that we cannot yet explain. What do you think is the most plausible explanation for the internal injuries found on the hikers? Was it the crushing force of an avalanche, or the impact of a secret Soviet weapon? Which piece of evidence from the Ural Polytech Institute team's final days do you find most baffling? Perhaps it is the slashed tent, or the missing tongue, or the strange radioactivity on their clothes. Do you believe Yoryudin's survival was simple luck, or did he know more than he revealed? Did Igor Dyatlov lead his team into a trap, or were they victims of an unpredictable mountain? We invite you to share your own theories and join the discussion in the comment section below. Think of the comment section as our own modern-day archive for this haunting Cold War mystery. Engage with other viewers to piece together the fragments of this frozen puzzle from the past. The Grade 3 certification they sought ended in a tragedy that still echoes through the Ural Mountains. Some suggest katabatic winds, while others whisper about cryptids or extraterrestrial visitors in the night sky. Is there a detail we missed that could finally unlock the truth behind the Dyatlov Pass incident? Your insights might be the key to understanding what truly happened on that desolate, snowy peak. Every perspective brings us one step closer to honoring the memory of those 9 lost souls. Don't forget to like and subscribe to explore more of history's most chilling and unsolved mysteries. We appreciate you joining us on this journey into the heart of the Siberian wilderness today. We hope to see you in the next deep dive, and as always, thanks for watching.